What's wrong with withdrawing from my principal? All right, here's my man Eric. He writes in, he says, obligatory, Josh, I love your videos. You're so handsome. He didn't say the handsome part because Eric likes the ladies, as he should. It seems like many advisors want you to live off the interest off your investments without touching the principal. What's wrong with dipping into the principal if you can afford to do so and still leave money to my heirs if I so choose? I worked my whole life socking away money for retirement, and I'm only supposed to live off the interest. I'd rather dip into my principal and enjoy life. Thoughts? Yeah, 100%, Eric. I completely agree. One of my pet peeves, not even a frustration, but one of the things that's a struggle, maybe that's even too strong a word, is that a lot of people say, I'm just going to set up my retirement so I don't touch my capital gains. I don't touch my principal. I'm just going to live off the dividends and interest, and maybe capital gains. I'm like, I don't get that. First of all, dividend rates are, 1.5% right now? I mean, instead of doing dividends nowadays, what the companies are doing is they're just buybacking shares. So buyback of a shares will decreases the number of shares outstanding and theoretically will increase the share price, just basic supply and demand. So I don't know, that might increase the capital gain, I suppose, but not necessarily. But anyway, how do you just live off dividends if you're only getting 1.5%? I mean, that means if you had, $100,000, you're getting 1.5% on the S&P 500 dividend, you're making $1,500 a year, something like that? Yeah, $1,500 a year. That means if you had $1 million in the S&P 500, VOO, you're making, $15,000 a year? Is that right? Okay. I mean, that's $1 million, dude. And the interest is not going to be any interest in the S&P 500. So the other accounts will be interest are paying good now, money markets. So let's say you had $500,000 in money market. That's going to pay you 5%. That'll pay you $25,000 a year. Yeah, and then $500,000 in the S&P 500, which will pay you $5,500 a year. So that's $30,000 a year. That's good. You can live off that for sure. I got no qualm with that. All right, so now your $500,000 in the S&P 500, $500,000 in your money market account is paying basically $30,000 a year. Is that right? Yeah, about 3% yield. All right, so you're not touching the principal. Well, guess what happens when you hit 75? Your RMD is going to be higher than 3% anyway. The RMD is going to be 3.8%, I think, the first year. So I've never quite. I get it. The reasoning behind I don't want to touch my earning. I don't want to touch my principal because you're saying at the end of the day, regardless of what the share price does, goes up or down, I'm not touching the amount of shares. I'm only touching the interest, the cash that's accumulated. That's it. I get that. But, man, it seems to me, especially on the front end of your retirement, if you're just living off your dividends and interest, I just showed you, S&P 500 dividends 1.5, the money market's 5, and that's probably going to go down. You're not. Seems to me you should be spending more, even if that means touching your principal. And that's why I like the bucket account. You've got the bucket. So instead of spending $30,000 a year on dividends and interest, I'm going to spend $50,000 a year. All right, that's going to be some of my principal. So I have $500,000 in the money market, $500,000 in S&P 500. If the S&P 500 goes down in value, I take my $50,000 a year I need to live on from the money market. If the S&P 500 goes up, I take the $50,000 I need from the S&P 500. Just that simple, man. That way I'm not selling shares at a loss, and I also get a nice dividend or income off the money market while it's happening. Because remember, 3, 4, 5 years ago, money markets weren't paying crap. I just think it's a great portfolio as opposed to I'm just going to live off my dividends. I get the reasoning behind it, but I just find that to be too restrictive. I tell you, man, I'm 50. I just turned 54. And, the days are getting shorter, I got, 20, 25 years ahead of me. That's it, dude. That's it. So, anyway, good question, Eric. Appreciate it. Love your thoughts. God bless.